watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome to On the Beat. I'm Deputy Chief Rodney Bright of the Germantown Police Department. Today I'm glad to have on the show two of our officers from the K9 unit, Nick Iacobucci and Scott Panaia. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
As we all know, many members of the public love animals and love dogs, and our K9 unit certainly is no different. So just tell me a little bit about how long you've been with the department and how long you've been with our unit.
I've been with the department almost a little bit over 11 years. Had K9 position for a little bit over a year. I trained with my K9. Her name is Enza. She's a female Belgian Malinois. There are several different types of dogs that police use. Belgian Malinois is one, German Shepherds and Labs. I trained with Enza for about 4 months at a local police department that hosted a training seminar. Whenever I did get her, she's about a year old. She came from the Netherlands overseas, and we picked her up at a well-known kennel here in the U.S. And brought her back and been with her ever since.
I know she's very popular with the community and
Yes.
Great representation of the police department. Scott, what about you? How long have you been with the department and how long have you been serving in the role as a K9 handler?
I've been with Germantown since 1991, about 17 years. I've got Smokey, he's a shepherd. He's from Slovenska, right outside of Czechoslovakia. He's a single-purpose dog. He alerts to the odor of heroin, cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana. I've had Smokey, actually next month will be his 4th year that we've been working together.
Great. I know you mentioned single purpose, and for our viewers may not understand that. That's a great way to talk about the difference in the two dogs that we have now. Enza has a little bit of different things that she provides in way of service. Smokey's a little bit different. Nick,
Yes.
you want to talk a little bit about what the capabilities of Enza?
Like Scott Panaia, he just said his dog is single purpose, mine is dual purpose, meaning that she does narcotics and she's also apprehension. So she is able to do all the narcotics things that Smokey can do. In addition, she can track for suspects. She's apprehension, so if suspects are running and for certain instances, whenever we do have to deploy her, she can apprehend the suspect for us.
What about Smokey? I know we talk about single purpose and normally a day in the life of Smokey and you on your shift, what would that look like?
He lives with me. Both of us have take-home cars. The dogs live with us. He lives in my house. He does have a kennel, which he prefers to be in most of the time. During the summer or when it's warm out, the air conditioner is always running in the vehicle. If it gets too hot, we've got a heat alarm that will go off to potentially save the life of the dog. And we make our own traffic stops. We also assist other officers. If they believe there's narcotics in the car, they'll call us down. We'll do an exterior sniff. If he alerts, that gives us probable cause to search.
Outstanding. Well, I know that for those of us that serve in law enforcement, there's something about the job in itself that draws us in.
Yes, sir.
And many of us have a passion for that. But I also think it's a little bit unique. In addition to that, what draws you into being a K9 handler? What drew you to that job opening and wanting to serve in that capacity?
I mean, growing up, I always wanted to be a police officer, and once I became a police officer, even prior to that, I always knew I wanted to be a K9 handler. I grew up, having dogs, German Shepherds and everything, and that was just kind of one of my top dreams of doing is becoming a K9 officer. And opportunity arose about almost a year and a half ago. Submitted all the necessary paperwork and memos, and I was chosen for the position.
What about you, Scott?
Pretty much the same. Also, one of the aspects that I like about the dogs is we do a lot of demonstrations, elementary schools, civic organizations, just about anybody that wants us will come and do that, and I like interacting with the young kids.
That's a great point. I think one of our goals in our K9 program has always been to have dogs that are approachable, social, yet also go out and work and get the job done. What's it like to interact with members of the public? Do people come
Awesome.
up and talk to you about your dogs? Can they do they pet the dogs?
Yeah, I mean, whether it's an actual demonstration we're doing, or I'm just in the park letting her get a little bit of exercise in between the car rides, people come up to me and start talking to me, and next thing I know, 30, 45 minutes have passed, and we're just talking about the dog and her capabilities and what an asset she is to our city and department.
I know that the police department focuses a lot on training for our officers and our staff, and we certainly have a lot of equipment that we use, and certainly the dogs, looking at it in that perspective, they are a tool to help us do our job better.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about the training that's involved to get the dog ready to go into service, and then is there regular training, ongoing training?
There's a federal mandate where we have to train at least 16 hours per month. We pretty much get that 16 hours and sometimes more than that. We train with Carville, Bartlett, South Haven, just area departments and everything we do, so we're kind of on the same page. And there's several dogs there, and everyone helps out, whether we have to get in the bite suit or hide in the woods for hours at a time, and we all just work together just to improve the K9 unit as a whole in this area.
Scott, anything on training? What about Smokey and his narcotic detection? What would that look like?
We also do 16 hours a month, some months more. It's all 4 odors that these dogs have to be certified every year, whether it's narcotics, bomb, apprehension, they have to be certified, and the dog gets certified with the handler. So every year Smokey and I are certified together. Nick and Enza will be certified together. We're through NNDDA is who we get our certifications through.
Just as we wrap up here, I know we talk about the life of the dog while they're at work. Just real quickly, what does life look like for Enza and Smokey when they're away from work?
Enza, she likes to be inside. She'll cut up on the couch whenever she's not working. There is an outdoor kennel that I have, but I rarely put her in the kennel. But if I need to, she doesn't mind it. Obviously, the weather has a lot to do with whether or not I'm going to put her in there or not. But when she's not at work, seems like a normal house dog, other than she'll bark a little bit more than usual when someone comes to the door. But she's really social. I can have people over, and she's just like another dog. We're just wanting to play with her toys, and she almost gets a little bit too annoying just because she wants to play the whole time and won't leave anyone alone. But,
and I know there is a certain limit on the years of service. What does it look like at the end of the years of service for a dog? What would happen to them?
Generally, the dogs are owned by the city. The city gives the handler the option to keep the dog, and then they'll retire the dog. And then, like my dog that I had before Smokey, Jet, was retired. I took him home, and he lived out about 2 years longer after he retired. These dogs are the most dedicated employees the city has, and they're treated very well at home.
Certainly can't argue with that. Just as we're a law enforcement family, they certainly become a part of that.
Yes, sir.
And part of your personal family. Well, thank you both for being here today.
Yes, sir.
thank you.
And it's time for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about our crisis intervention team training program with Captain Jack Antonuk and Officer Allyson Janelli. Be back in a bit.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to On the Beat. I'm your host, Deputy Chief Rodney Bright. Police agencies often respond to calls for service related to persons suffering from mental health or emotional related crisis. Here to talk about our specially trained crisis intervention team is Captain Jack Antonuk and Officer Allyson Janelli. Welcome, Captain Antonuk and Officer Janelli, to the show.
Thank you.
Chief.
Talking about CIT and crisis intervention, could you provide our viewers, Captain Antonuk, with just an overview about what that really means and what that program is about?
Well, the Crisis Intervention Team program is something that was designed many years ago, primarily at the time for dealing with people who were suicidal or depressed. And over the years, the program has evolved from those crisis situations to dealing with others who might be suffering from a mental health condition, and has evolved further still into those situations where people are suffering from crisis, emotional crisis.
And I know that working with those situations can be very difficult, and I know that our staff goes through a lot of different kind of training. I was going to ask Officer Janelli, what do you think would be required of someone who wants to be a CIT trained officer?
A CIT officer should really be patient, compassionate, be able to actively listen to what they're being told to do while maintaining a calm presence to help de-escalate the situation.
I know that we go to these scenes, we get these calls for service, and they seem to have been increasing over time. Do we have any information about the regularity or the increase in those types of calls?
Well, in Germantown, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've had an increase every year of about 35% more calls for service, where the caller either knows or believes that possibly one of the people involved is suffering from an emotional crisis or mental health crisis.
And I know when we make those scenes, we're usually dealing with family members, and sometimes there may be a crime involved, and sometimes there may not be. Can you speak about the criteria maybe that we use as measuring as to what our options may be?
Well, traditionally, let me go back to where we were 20 years ago. Police officers were generally set up to come in and find a problem, find a crime, and address it. And with the CIT program, it's really helped focus police officers not just on problem solving and taking people to jail, but finding out what the problem is and helping people. And so talking with people and getting to find out what their concerns are is the first step that we need to take.
And I think when we show up to the scene, we certainly historically have to be good listeners. That's probably a pretty necessary skill even in this area. And I know that we receive a lot of basic training when we come into this job, but can you talk, Allyson, about the special training and what that entails as far as crisis intervention?
Sure. It's a 40-hour basic class that you start off with, and it goes through some of the psychological aspects of someone in crisis, some of the emotional phases that go through, and then they actually have practicums where you have to pretty much participate against role players who have gone on scenes that they're going to present, and they act as the person in crisis, and you have to try and work with them. They'll help you kind of learn in a safe environment what can and cannot be beneficial. If you make a mistake, no one gets hurt, and that's a very important part of the training is you learn what to do there so you can better help the people that you encounter on the job.
And I believe some of that training actually involves going to an actual mental health facility and actually talking to, mental consumers. Can you speak about that?
We went to a couple of different facilities and a couple of different meeting groups. NAMI Memphis, which is the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, has a couple of group sessions in different locations where people who do have a mental health disorder or any kind of emotional crisis issue, they can go and they do different things. You get to sit down and talk with these individuals when they are actually in a more stable condition, and they kind of tell you what has worked for them in the past, what doesn't work for them in the past, what an officer can do to make the situation better, what an officer can do to cause it to shut down or break down. We did go to some of the larger mental health hospitals in Memphis, and we actually also got to go to the VA and talk to some of their patients there as far as the mental health aspect for veterans, which was actually probably one of the best parts of the training.
And one thing, speaking about training, we're very fortunate in our area to have access to really the agency that set the standard, and the model was developed years ago with the Memphis Police Department. So I think we'd be remiss not to mention that. Can you talk about the partnerships with Memphis and ongoing training and some of the other agencies that we work with here locally?
Well, the Memphis Police Department is the department that initiated the program of CIT nationwide, and it's fortunate for us that they're the jurisdiction immediately adjacent to Germantown. We've been able to partner with them. They've provided opportunities for us to train in their classrooms when they're training their officers. To get certified as a CIT officer, you spend 40 hours in that classroom. As Officer Janelli was saying, some of it's going to be in the classroom, some of it's going to be in practicals, and then some on-site visits. Then we have also partnered with the Sheriff's Office. They've provided training as well. And there are public and private hospitals that we've used to help provide care to the citizens.
And I know some of the calls that we respond to, though it's not just an adult problem. Sometimes we deal with the young people. Is there a process or a way that we would handle that differently?
There are different places that you can take a juvenile for assistance. You would treat a juvenile the same as an adult as far as trying to understand where their problem is with them, trying to help them de-escalate themselves so they can calmly and collect themselves and figure out what needs to be done to help them. There are a lot of facilities that will only take juveniles. There are some that will not because they have adults and they don't want to mix the two. But there are programs available for both, and sometimes you have to be a little bit more patient with juveniles. Sometimes, depending on the age, their life experiences that they don't necessarily have yet, so it's hard to relate. So you have to find a medium, middle ground to be able to relate to them on. And once you find that, you can better help them.
Yeah. What about ongoing training? I know we get initial training. Is there anything after the initial 40 hours that the officers receive?
Well, the officers who go through the certification, they have the 40 hours of training that year. And again, through our partnership with the Sheriff's Office, we routinely spend an 8-hour session doing an in-service every year or every other year with their trainers and their instructors, going over trends, topics, and a review of some of the fundamentals.
And I would recognize too that not anyone can be a CIT officer. It certainly takes a special person with a lot of abilities and a lot of interpersonal relationship skills, and the program has been very much recognized as being successful. And I know that there are many families out here that have benefited from the training that you all have and our officers have had. And so thank you for your leadership in the CIT area in helping our officers and helping our department solve problems that oftentimes are really difficult to solve. And thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have to take another short break. In our last segment, Captain Mike Gray from our Investigations Division will be here to talk about crimes related to fraud, scams, and skimmers. Be back in a bit.
Cinderella found the pet that fits her perfectly. Tiana gave her pet the royal treatment. Belle found beauty where no one else did. And you can too. Share your heart. Share your love. Bring home your forever friend. Make a shelter pet part of your world. Happily Ever After begins at theshelterpetproject.org.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back. We often get calls and questions about possible scams that attempt to victimize members of our community. Here to talk about these crimes and other fraud-related matters is Captain Mike Gray from our Investigations Division. Welcome, Captain Gray.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of background. Just could you tell our viewers about how long you've been with our department and how long you've been in the Investigations Division?
I've been with the Germantown Police Department since 1987. Started as a reserve and then moved into full-time policing with Germantown, and I probably spent about 5 to 6 years in the Uniform Patrol Division, and the remainder to now has mostly been in an investigative type status.
And I know a lot of, we get feedback from the community via social media or phone calls or walk-in questions, and one consistent topic seems to be recently about scams and fraud-related matters. What are y'all seeing back there in the back as far as what's being brought to our attention?
We see, as a recent, the jury-type scams where somebody's receives a telephone call and they're told that they missed court for jury duty, and they've issued a warrant for them, and then they've asked them to go to the local store and purchase usually they refer to what's called a green dot card, but they aren't the only card that's usable in that nature. But and then send the money. The others that we've seen are just regular telephone scams at the house, where people are being told that they've won a certain amount of money, making it out to be that, we need to send you this money and then you send us other money. So some people fall for that as well. IRS scams have been usually in the beginning of the year. They're usually at a higher level that we see come in.
And I know anyone could fall victim to a scam or something that is brought to their attention, and maybe they get excited about the opportunity to win some money or gain some money they wouldn't normally have.
Yes.
Do we see that these kind of scams or fraud, do they target a certain segment of the community more than any other?
I don't know that they necessarily target a different segment. I think our elder community is more susceptible to the trying to benefit, or sounds too good to be, or sounds real good for them to profit from it. So I think they tend to fall, trusting of the caller or person that they're have the encounter with.
Just generally speaking, what are some things that maybe those citizens that when they get an email that looks suspicious or a phone call that sounds suspicious, what advice could we give them?
Well, the biggest, probably the biggest recommendation would be is safeguard your personal information. If somebody asks for it online, or if somebody asks for it over the telephone, if you didn't generate the telephone call yourself and you know who you're speaking to on the other side, you shouldn't volunteer that information at all or release that information at all. You mentioned the internet or emails. If the email, you should always pay attention to the body of the email, sometimes the subject of it, and again, if it's from a reputable company that you may do business with, I would recommend that you don't respond directly to that email. If you're going to communicate with them, either communicate by phone or go directly to their website.
Would you generally say it's safe to tell our viewers that law enforcement, I know that's one scam involving unpaid citations and warrants. We're not going to call you and ask for money over the phone.
Correct.
And I think that's something that that some people fall victim for because it's coming from, they purport to be from law enforcement.
Yes.
One last issue I think that's been recent in our city and others is the device scams or skimmers that we get calls about. Can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yes. The ATM machines and your pay at the gas pumps, card readers are a target for what's called nowadays it's more of a Bluetooth technology where they're putting a device on it that'll communicate through Bluetooth to either their computer or a cell phone. But that's been increasing. Your gas stations have put into place additional security measures in changing up certain things. Credit card companies have changed their credit cards, trying to make them more secure.
I know that as a consumer, when you go to the gas pumps or you go to the ATM, you may or may not be able to recognize one of those skimmers. Correct.
Because they've come a long ways. It used to be something that they would place on the outside of the device in an attempt to capture your PIN number as well when you entered it, but they now have, we see more where they're actually accessing the inside of the device and placing something inside it that very hard to detect.
I think just as we leave our viewers today, we would just advise them, the old adage of if it sounds too good to be true or it looks too good to be true, it probably is. Then whenever someone in our community has a question or questions the legitimacy of some inquiry, they certainly should reach out to us to get our assistance.
Oh, always.
Okay. Thank you, Captain Gray, for being with us here today.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have on this edition of On the Beat. Stay tuned to us throughout the year as we spotlight public safety programs and partnerships and bring you interviews with people who strive to make Germantown a safe place to live, work, and play. If you'd like more information on this show or any other show on Germantown Municipal Television, please visit www.gmtvonline.org. If you have questions about policing in Germantown or topics you would like for us to discuss, feel free to send those by email to my attention at rbright@germantown-tn.gov. We'll see you when On the Beat returns next month.